Hi everyone, welcome back to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. It's your host Sarah and I'm on my own today and we are talking about what triggers BPD reactions or BPD symptoms, what's commonly triggering them. But before we get into it, I have 2 pieces of fan mail to read. The first is, hello, I just discovered your podcast discussing BPD. I'm just recently diagnosed at 29. I would love a platform to talk with others who experience the same difficulties in life. I'm still in my journey of recovery. I love listening to you. It was very relating, and I hope to get a chance to hear back from you. Yes, thank you so much for the piece of mail. I would love to hear from you. As always, if you or anyone is listening wants to come on the podcast to share your story, all you have to do is email me at boldbeautifulborderline@gmail.com. Again, thank you so much, and welcome to the club, BPD babes, and non-binary folks, and men living with borderline personality disorder. It's a fun bunch over here. Okay, the second piece of mail. Hi there, my partner of 6 years and I broke up recently. It was amicable and we both care about each other, but I can't help but wonder if I caused him too much pain or traumatized him and he stayed because he was too kind. Any tips on surviving a long-term relationship breakup? Man, I feel like I should have more tips than I do, considering I've been in quite a few long-term relationships that have broken up. It's fucking sad, and there's no way around that. So I would say feel your feelings and allow yourself to just be where you are with this breakup, and expect that it might take quite a while, especially the longer the relationship. They say like the harder the breakup or the more amount of time you need to kind of heal and move on from that breakup can be. So don't set any time expectations or limits on how long you hurt for. This was especially true for me in my divorce. Like it's been 5 years and I still hurt from my divorce sometimes. The first 3 years were really bad. And I even got remarried and it was still sometimes really bad. So it's okay that this might hurt for a while. Other tips, even though you are amicable and you both really care about each other, it's not a bad idea to take space and to be no contact for a while, just to allow yourself to really have some clarity about the situation. And then you said, I can't help but wonder if I caused him too much pain or traumatized him and he stayed because he was too kind. Like, that's a him thing, not a you thing. If he stayed because he was quote unquote too kind, then he has to take responsibility for that. That's not your fault. And if you caused him too much pain or traumatized him, you know, those are his feelings, right? He's allowed to have those feelings, but we can't hold ourselves accountable for someone else's feelings. We can only hold ourselves accountable for what we do. And it sounds like through breaking up, that's sort of a way of saying like, I'm accountable for what I did and I can't remain in this relationship anymore because it's not good for me and it's not good for you. So you should in a way congratulate yourself on this breakup that was amicable. You made the choice to end the relationship because it wasn't working for you and it wasn't working for him. And I really believe that's like something to be proud of. The other thing is like there's always going to be these voices rolling around in our head telling ourselves that we cause people too much pain. And most often those voices are amplified compared to the situation at hand. So if we want to use some fact checking there, it's possible that maybe you didn't cause him as much pain as you think you did. But then also he likely caused you pain as well. Like you don't have to have borderline to do quote unquote harm or to cause people pain through your behavior. This is just a human experience. Like we fuck up, we make mistakes, right? So try to have some grace for yourself. Thank you so much for the message. And I am sending you all the love in your breakup, and just know that you're not alone. There's a community of people that have felt really similar to you, my friend. Okay, so let's talk about what the most common triggers of BPD symptoms are. These are repetitive. You've heard them before because some of them are a part of the diagnostic criteria, but this episode is especially important for someone listening who's a family member or a friend of someone with borderline personality disorder, because it's a better way to understand us. And I'll give some examples for myself. So the first is fear of abandonment, right? Like feeling like someone is going to leave you is the worst feeling in the world when you have BPD. It is effing terrible. And it's kind of like, oh, I expect it at every turn. So you're constantly thinking that someone might be leaving you, even if they're not leaving you. A really good example of this is the other night, my husband was out late tattooing with friends, which when I say out late, he was out until like 11 o'clock at night. This is not, we are way past our days of like the 2 a.m. club close and then the post bar party and then the muchas gracias and then the rolling in with an Uber at 5 a.m. or drunk driving at 5 a.m. Like we're not at that stage in our life anymore. He's not staying out super late, but I stayed up until like 9:30 or 10, and around that time I started to feel like, wow, is this motherfucker ever gonna come home, or does he just like hate me? He must just hate me. He must just think I'm just a disgusting piece of shit because he's not coming home. When if I fact check that, the reality is these are his two best friends he hasn't seen for months. Tattooing takes quite a while. I was invited to attend and I chose not to attend because I wanted to stay home and watch Mad Men and eat popcorn. Like those are the facts of the situation. The facts do not fit my fear that he is leaving me. But I still feel like he is abandoning me. And so that's where we have to really differentiate between the fact and the feeling. The feeling is real and true and it exists, but it isn't actually based in something that is happening. So that feeling of being left results in kind of like panic or like a desperation almost. And then that can come with sadness or it can come with like extreme anger. So that feeling of being abandoned is a huge trigger for BPD symptoms. And it can come from like the most minor of situations, like someone not texting you back, for example, or like leaving you on red when they just might be driving or unable to text you back in that moment, or like they're out of service or something. Like there could be some really good reasons for why they're not texting you back. But the BPD brain, the trauma brain says they hate me, they never want to be around me, I'm worthless, I'm X, Y, and Z, fill in the blank. Just a good reminder, our abandonment fears are not based in reality. Some people will leave us. I'm not going to lie. I got left. I got divorced. I didn't fucking want to get divorced, right? But often when people leave us, there's something even better waiting for us. And I don't want us to forget that fact or reality or whatever maybe it's not a fact that there's always something better waiting for us, but often it is a fact that there's something better waiting for us. So fear of abandonment is number one. Okay, number two, sometimes hard to differentiate from fear of abandonment, but it is rejection sensitivity. And I actually just recently put out a blog on the website, boldbeautifulborderline.com, about rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So go read that. Or if you're on Patreon, I have bonus episodes where I read you the blogs that I have written. So go listen to that there if you haven't already. But rejection sensitivity is like, it's like having your heart have someone's hand around it and they're just like slowly like squeezing and you're like going to burst, right? It is so deeply uncomfortable. The most subtle signs that someone might be rejecting you can result in like the most intense feelings of rejection, and that can result in pretty severe grasps for somebody, like trying to keep them in your orbit, that aren't always very healthy. And again, if we're going to use a fact-checking model, aren't necessary for the situation at hand. So I think about myself and I think about there was this one time that I bought someone a gift and I never heard back from them about what they thought of the gift, the Christmas gift. And this was someone in my life that I really love and value and want to remain close with. And not hearing back from them about the gift, I was like, well, they obviously think I'm stupid and have no taste and don't want to be my friend anymore, don't want to be my whatever relationship I have with this person because I don't want to out this. And so I was like, they're ignoring me. They don't want to spend time with me. They don't love me the way that I love them. Like, it induced a ton of shame and self-criticism and like just feeling like I didn't exist almost over something as simple as I gave someone a book and I don't know if they liked it or not. And maybe they're not the type of person to tell me that they liked a gift that they gave me. That's okay. That doesn't mean that they think I'm X, Y, and Z. That doesn't mean that I am being rejected by them. And in fact, all of this year and a half later, I have not been rejected by them. We're still very close. We just have never spoken about the Christmas gift, and that is okay. But in that moment, you couldn't have told me that that would have been the outcome. You could not have told me otherwise than what I was thinking, which is, we're never going to be connected the way that I want to be connected. They're never going to love me the way that I want them to love me. You know, they don't think that I am articulate and smart and whatever. But all of their behavior since then has shown that they don't believe those things to be true. So rejection sensitivity can set off those borderline symptoms big time. Another reason why BPD symptoms can be triggered is relationship uncertainty. I won't speak for everyone, but a lot of us have been there where we have a friends with benefits, but maybe we've caught feelers and we're not really sure what's happening. And you kind of get in the what are we not, what are we doing here dynamic, and it can result in just a fucking spiral. And then maybe you're like me and you sort of at that point after the spiral go to the person or you're like, you need to tell me what we are right now or I can't keep doing this. Which is not inherently bad. That's a boundary that's being set, but it's like the way that I go about the boundary, right? Maybe not that effective. So that internal experience that's happening for somebody with borderline when there's unclarity or lack of clarity in a relationship is it results in anxiety, maybe even panic attacks for you. And that anxiety or panic results in overthinking. What are we? Why are we this way? How are we going to be? What does the future have in store for us? Do you even like me? Right? All of that overthinking stuff. That results in a ton of emotion dysregulation. Mood swings, anger, sadness, fear. Oh, but there's some happiness because I got the dopamine that I was looking for from this person. Oh no, there's more anger and sadness and fear. Oh, there's the dopamine again. So that overthinking and the trying to come up with all of these different scenarios or whatever for what the relationship is and how the relationship is and what you want the relationship to be results in those mood swings. And that can result in some splitting behavior, some black and white thinking, that idealizing and then devaluing that we talk about. The I hate you, I love you that people often say, which results in the walking on eggshells that people often say, right? Those classic terms that are such bullshit. I hate that. I don't support those books, like whatever. But that is the way that sometimes relationship uncertainty can show up. And so it's important that we use our skills like a DBT Dear Man and say, you know, I've noticed that there's lack of clarity in this relationship where we're having sex, but we also hang out and don't have sex. And we also go grab dinner, but we're not dating or we're not saying that we're dating. And like, I'm confused. And I think I would like more. What would you like? Like, what I need is you to tell me kind of what you're thinking about it and where you see us being. That would be far more effective than what I used to do, which was get drunk and be like, I need you to fucking tell me right now what we're doing or I can't do it. Not super effective. But with our DBT skills, we can be far more effective. Okay, the next is an invalidating environment. If you have BPD, you have most likely, almost undoubtedly, experienced an invalidating environment, whether that was at school, at home with your family, with your friends, or all of the above. Like, you know what it feels like in your body. You know what it feels like to be invalidated. Those experiences of being told you're too much, you're overreacting, your feelings aren't right, like those emotional minimizations are really painful and damaging for somebody with borderline, because often we already feel like overwhelmed by our own emotions. We're already having a hard time trying to figure out what is real and what isn't real, and then being told, no, that's not real, is very confusing. And that results in those emotional spirals and that anger, especially for me, that results in big time anger. Like, who the fuck are you to tell me that I can't feel this way? That's dangerous to somebody with borderline personality disorder. That can result in self-harm, that can result in suicidal ideation, or even an attempt. Being minimized is a huge reason why we develop borderline personality disorder often. And if you're a friend or a family member listening, it's really important that you say to us, I see and understand why your feelings are the way they are right now. Like, I see that you are hurting. I don't necessarily understand it, but I want to understand it. Can you please explain this to me? You might be uncomfortable by our big feelings. That's not our fault. But minimizing our feelings, telling us that this isn't real, telling us we're crazy, telling us we're overreacting, that's your fault. Like, there has to be some accountability for that behavior, just like we have to be accountable for what we do when we feel invalidated. And when I use the word fault, I don't say that in a blaming way, but there is an accountability that needs to take place that isn't being taken when you say to somebody, you're overreacting. Because what you're doing as a person on the other side of this is actually ignoring the fact that you're uncomfortable by our big feelings by placing it back on us. And that's not fair to us. So, invalidating environments. Notice those key words for somebody listening that doesn't have borderline. Overreacting, too much, too big, too crazy. That can result in a huge spiral for us and a lot of BPD symptoms. The next scenario is anything that challenges our identity. So we call this identity disturbance triggers. Situations that challenge like who we are and the way that we see ourselves, what our values are, why we make the choices that we're making, those kinds of things. So this can happen, for example, a new person comes into your life, a new friend, a new partner, a new coworker, something like that. They come into your life and suddenly it's like they're so cool or they're so interesting or they have these hobbies that I really like, and now I don't know who I am. I don't know what I do. I don't know why I do the things that I do. I've really struggled with this in my marriage because I'm married to someone who is an artist, right? For lack of a better term, Talon makes art. He's a tattooer. He paints. He draws. He sketches. He does resin. He does all of the shit. And I'm not an artist. Like, I tinker around with some stuff and I like to make jewelry, but I'm not an artist the way that he's an artist. And it's almost at times made me resent the fact that I'm a social worker because I'm like, I want to be an artist like you. That's so cool. I want to be as talented as you. What the fuck is wrong with me that I can't do that? And it almost makes me want to like start painting and drawing and be a tattooer. But I'm not a tattooer. Like, that's not who I am. I'm a person who loves tattoos and collects them and have long before I met my husband. But I'm never going to be a tattooer. I'm a social worker. Like, I will always be a social worker. But there was a period of time where I was like, I don't even like who I am because I like who you are so much. that I want to be like you. It's not enough to love you. I want to become you. And I felt like that in my relationship. And you guys have heard me talk about this relationship, highly inappropriate relationship. I was with my coach when I was 17. They were older than I was. And she was an amazing softball player. She was also selling drugs and, whatever. But it made me feel completely inadequate in my skills as a player. And it made me do things that I otherwise wouldn't do. Like, I would have never sold drugs, but I sold drugs with her because I was like, I love you so much. I think you're so cool and so interesting. And I feel so much shame about who I am that I don't even know anymore. That maybe it is okay that I would be a drug dealer. Like, maybe that would be okay. You guys, that's so far from my value system and what I would normally choose for myself. But because I saw her as somebody that had so much more status than I had, because there was such a profound power dynamic in that relationship, like, I wanted a sense of power, which meant that I wanted to be like her in that relationship. And I felt so empty on my own. Like, without her, I felt completely unstable in who I was. Now, my identity disturbance triggers are much different now, and they're way more mild than they were in that relationship. I was 17 at the time. I'm 33 now. I know that no matter what, I'm not going to go sell drugs with somebody. I know that I'm not going to date someone who's selling drugs. Like, I know that's who I am. But at the time, I didn't know if that was who I was or not. And my symptoms were really active when I was 17, 18, 19, in my 20s, far more active than they are now. Now I feel like I've got a really strong sense of self. But anything that makes us unsure about ourselves, like a new job, a breakup, moving to a new city, anything that is a conflict of our value system can result in those identity disturbance symptoms, which is often like trying out a new personality or trying out a new way of living or being really reactive and activated when you are having to sit with yourself on your own, not with other people. So identity disturbance triggers, that's another one. So another common BPD trigger sort of speaks for itself, especially when we think about the development of borderline personality disorder, but it's trauma reminders or triggers of past trauma. Most people with BPD have a significant trauma history. A lot of people with BPD have had a co-occurring PTSD diagnosis. Maybe you've experienced CPTSD, which we just recently talked about in another episode called What the Fuck is CPTSD with Dr. Kiki Failing. Please listen to that episode. It's a really good one. But if you have BPD, you've experienced trauma. And the most subtle things like a smell or a tone of someone's voice or walking through the mall, like anything can trigger a reminder of trauma, whether it's just a reminder of trauma or like a significant PTSD symptom. That can happen at any moment, unfortunately. And that can really set off the super overwhelming emotions that people with borderline personality disorder experience. Things like feeling out of control in a relationship or there being a slight power shift or power dynamic can really set off triggers of trauma and those big emotions and the fight or flight or freeze. And I know for me, I go into run, I go into abandon, I'm big time flight. When I was younger, I was big time fight. Those flashbacks are really scary and really painful. I know that this has really impacted me a lot in my sexual relationship. So when I have sex, sometimes I will be reminded of rape or molestation, and that is all I can think about while I'm trying to have sex, and I have to stop having sex. And that is like, it sends me into a big emotional spiral, like crying, can't control my crying, like putting my head in a pillow, can't breathe, total panic attack. And that can often set off like 2 days worth of mood disruption, just like mood cycling, angry, sad, scared, happy over and over and over again. I can start to feel like I'm being controlled, even though I'm not being controlled in my relationship. I can start to feel like somebody is abandoning me, even though I'm not being abandoned. Like the funniest thing where like I will prompt the ending of having sex, but because we stopped having sex, then I might feel like, oh, you didn't want to have sex with me, you're abandoning me. That's kind of how BPD shows up. Reminders of trauma are really hard. And if you experience this often, please work with a therapist around this. Like, we know that PTSD and CPTSD are preventable and treatable, curable, whatever the able word you want to use is, through accessing the right therapies. And if you're a person that hasn't experienced trauma but loves someone who's experienced trauma, it's really important that you're aware of the ways in which that impacts them and the things that you might do. So maybe you need to not wear that cologne. Maybe you need to not say that word a certain way. Maybe you need to not hold my hand that specific way, whatever the thing is, because that could inadvertently set off huge trauma triggers. Trauma reminders are very painful, very scary, very hard to live with, but we don't have to live with them. Totally treatable. Okay, y'all, that is certainly not an exhaustive list of reasons why BPD symptoms can be triggered, but those are some of the most common, or not even most common, but common reasons why BPD symptoms can be triggered. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I'm sure on future episodes I'll talk about other reasons why BPD symptoms can be triggered. Hi, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. That is super helpful for me. It helps us find additional folks who want to listen to the show, want to feel seen, family members who want to learn, and partners who want to understand. If you want to follow along to more than just the podcast, find us on Instagram at Bold Beautiful Borderline, find me at Borderline from Hell, or head over to boldbeautifulborderline.com where there's information, resources, a place to leave a voicemail to be heard on the podcast, which I love, and just general content. All of that information can be found in the show notes. And if you want to get exclusive content, which is bonus episodes, journal prompts, worksheets, all sorts of extra stuff. Sometimes videos of me with my hair very crazy with kind of impulsive borderline rants. Head over to Patreon and consider becoming a member. That is super helpful with creating content that allows me to destigmatize BPD and all of the other wild mental health struggles that we discuss on the podcast. A huge thanks to everyone who joins on the podcast to share their story and just generally helps keep this thing alive. Especially my friend Corey Evans from the Evergreen Band. He produced and created the music that is the intro and outro for this show, as well as the cover art that was created by my husband, Talon Abbott. Their information is found in the show notes. All of the information discussed in the podcast is purely personal experience. This is not medical recommendations. This is not therapy recommendations. There's no producer for this show. It's all me.